In the next edition of It's About Money, my guest will be Allison Meyers, and she is the Executive Director at Writers and Books. It's an organization that brings writers and readers together for programs and services. Join me in the next edition of It's About Money. Hello and welcome to another edition of It's About Money. I'm Nannette Nocon and thank you for joining us. I'm delighted that my guest today is Allison Meyers, who is the Executive Director at Writers and Books. It's a great organization. Welcome, Allison.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm excited to talk to you about everything the organization does.
Beautiful. That's great. Beautiful. I want to start by offering my condolences to you and the staff and people who are part of Writers and Books for the loss of Joe Flaherty. He's a tremendous guy and knew him for many years, and unfortunate of his sudden death.
Yeah, thank you. Such an impactful individual, not just for our organization, but throughout the arts and culture community, and somebody who was a real change maker in terms of the literary arts. So his legacy will go on and on because of his accomplishments.
Yeah, and thanks to leaders like you who will help continue to make that happen. So tell us about the history of Writers and Books. You and I are familiar with it, but our readers would like to know about it.
Well, we've actually been around for over 40 years at this point. And again, harkening back to Joe Flaherty, it all began when he took a repurposed mobile home as a book bus, and with his wife to be Liz Scott traveled across the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic states with a book bus filled with, at that point, undiscovered small press books and sometimes authors. So he would go around to different cultural sites of all kinds, and back then in the day, it could be a fairly spontaneous thing. It wasn't quite as bureaucratic and structured as it is now, and he had enormous success in engaging all people from all walks with literary works, and that inspired him ultimately to set up a permanent site here in Rochester, the first being a one-room storefront on Clinton Avenue, and then 3 years later relocating to our current location, which is a Claude Bragdon designed once police station. Has been repurposed, reimagined as a literary arts center, which has a great deal more space for then enacting many, many, many in-person programs. I know we're going to talk a little bit about COVID's impact on that sort of engagement, but his vision was really amazing, because he took his understanding of how the literary arts could be so interactive and stimulating and transformative, and just kind of went from there. So he was a real visionary and idealist, and that was the beginning of Writers and Books.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful, and the location today is just absolutely magnificent. It's great. One of the first things that he told me long ago is that a conversation that people have about reading, for example, the same book, is it takes away the economic barrier, right? Because you can talk about a subject with anyone if you read the book. So whatever book that you read, I thought, wow, that's really, really fantastic. So talk to us about the start. When you started, that was during the COVID time, just before COVID, right?
Yes, 2019.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Talk to us about that, the unique experience to start something that kind of gets shut down for a period of time.
Well, I guess Writers and Books was slightly in an enviable position, because unlike an orchestra or a theater house, we are quite portable. Literature is portable. So even though we enjoyed many, many in-person programs, and at that point our most popular program for youth was Summer Right, and those are reading and writing and interdisciplinary camps that we held through July and August. And at the time, previous to COVID, we would see 600 kids coming through. So the impact of COVID has been that post-COVID, we have more like 200 young people coming through, and that's okay. we've been able to adjust to that, make sure we're doing a very deep dive, and have been able to develop some really wonderful programs, such as a partnership with 5 urban Rochester libraries, where we deliver the summer right camps tuition-free.
Oh, wow.
And in that way, we're really, living our mission to make reading and writing available to people from all walks without economic barriers, without transportation barriers.
Yes, that's a big one, yes.
And the librarians, of course, do phenomenal work. They know their own communities and neighborhoods and constituents, and so we're able to plan with them to really tailor the camps for their community. So that's actually been, we feel like it's been terrific progress on the front. During COVID, of course, everyone was mightily affected because everybody's habits had changed. Sure. And I think universally people were navigating fear and isolation. One of the things that happened for us on the sort of economic side was that the virtual space for literary arts became very competitive, and we lost some market share there around a program that had been very vital for us, which were adult writing workshops, because authors began delivering their own workshops. Their speakers agency began delivering them. The publishers began delivering them. So we saw our market share diminish, not to mention that I would say historically for our audience, the in-person interaction was really an enormous asset. You can't replace that.
Sure.
It's not the same thing as doing it, on a little screen. So that was a shift for us. And maybe when we talk about our programming later, I'll talk to you a little bit about how we're evolving thoughtfully with inputs from the community, how we can re-energize writing workshops in a way that will work for them, but also work for writers and books financially.
Sure.
But we were really able to pivot quite well because we're a small-ish organization and flexible, and we thought outside the box. So, for instance, we launched a visiting authors program that is hybrid, but during COVID was completely virtual. Those are readings and conversations with authors, poets, and the advantage was that we could have people talking to us from all around the country, if not the globe. So it vastly expanded the exposure to writers outside our immediate community, and connected readers and writers, and also sort of reenacting Joe's vision about small presses. We could take great pains to intentionally curate readings and conversations with writers who are from marginalized writing communities, and also featuring people from small presses. So for us, we've been sustaining it. It's been enormously successful. We're in 46, have audiences in 46 states and 3 continents, so that's not too shabby for an organization here in Rochester.
That's fantastic. That's great. And that's a outcome of unintended outcome in a positive way of COVID. It's just expanded the reach.
Right. I think it's a matter of taking circumstances as they are and being adaptive.
Sure.
And also understanding what the literary landscape looks like, where you can compete and where you can offer something that is unique and yet familiar.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. How big is the staff at Writers?
Well, now we're 5.
5?
Yeah,
Oh,
our ideal number is 6 or 7. So we're in a space where we're thoughtfully thinking about how we're going to rebuild and where we're going to put our focus in 2025.
I see. Okay. Well, that's great. Sounds like a mighty group of 5.
Very mighty, yes, and a terrific board of directors as well, which is essential, as well as somebody who heads up that effort at GEM, George Eastman Museum.
Yes, yeah, it's great. So being an author, writer, how does that shape your perspective of leading writers and books?
I think for me it's really profound because it's both, personal, and it's my sort of raison d'etre. I have obviously a great belief in what the written and spoken word can do. I see literature is a transformational vehicle. I know that I have learned an enormous amount by pursuing my craft. I think it's also put me in a space where I've developed so many relationships. And since I'm not a youngster, there are many that have accrued over the years. And from my different spaces where I've been, for 10 years, I was executive director of Cave Canem Foundation, which is the country's leading organization for Black poets and Black poetics. So that put me in conversation with all kinds of different writing and reading communities. And those relationships, for the large part, have not only been sustained, but expanded. So I think had I not had the passion as a poet that I have, I could have been an effective leader, certainly, but I think it would have been a different kind of leadership. Everybody brings their own talents and passions to the positions. Sure. I've been fortunate to have the for-profit business side as a significant part of my professional development. I moved to the nonprofit side in the late 1990s, and so I have both of those sides of the brains operating left and right.
That's beautiful. That's great. Yeah.
So my writer self stays incredibly passionate about our mission and our people and what we do. And then the business part of me says, oh, we've got to keep our doors open. We've got to remain financially vital so that we can do the work.
Sure. Great. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about how the organization's pivoted with its programming and the reduction in the size, if you will, of the staff and all that. So thank you, Allison. It's been a great conversation so far.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we'll be right back. I'm Nannette Nocon, and my guest is Allison Meyers, and she is the Executive Director at Writers and Books. We'll be right back.
Sit with me, imagine what you'd see if every child had a book to read. 'Cause every kid across the nation deserves a book to read, and we can make it happen right now. No, I don't know what you've been told, but kids with books learn so much more. So the mission is for us to get a book to each and every child. So let's join hands, book people unite, unearth hidden passion. Survival, have a good time. Planting seeds of inspiration to motivate some magic. To change the writing on the wall, writing on the wall. And make a difference. One book can inspire a child. One book can be the first thing that helps to change a life. People unite.
Read to a child today and spark a lifetime of ambition.
And we're back. I'm Nannette Nocon. It's about money, and my guest is Allison Meyers. She's the Executive Director at Writers and Books. Thank you again for being here, Allison.
My pleasure.
So talk to us about the programming that's happening at Writers and Books these days.
Right. Well, we really kind of start from a philosophy so that we're always holding our feet to the flame of our mission, which, if you have a minute, I'd actually like to read what our mission statement is. Let me see if I have my notes here. Writers and Books promotes reading and writing as lifelong activities for people of all ages and backgrounds to enrich their lives and the intellectual, social, and cultural vibrancy of their communities. So embedded in that statement is the notion that there is this nexus between the literary arts and real life, which is, of course, economic, political, health, everything. And in Rochester, we know that we have a varied demographic. We're a city that is challenged by segregation. We're a city that's challenged by poverty in many spaces. So we are really trying to center those realities in terms of how we develop our programs. So because of COVID and because of our heightened awareness of our city's challenges as well as opportunities, because there's so much going on in the arts and culture space and so many activists, we're trying to think, how can we be of greatest service in our community? So one of the things that we have done and is working well for us is we removed program fees from almost all of our public-facing programs, except for a couple of them, Summer Rate, which is very, very expensive to produce, but we have a vigorous need-based scholarship program for that, and as I mentioned, tuition-free camps in the libraries. And in fact, about 28% of our camps are scholarship supported. And for that, we seek support from individuals and from foundations. And I have to say the Greater Rochester Foundations have been incredibly supportive, and we're so grateful for that. There's mission alignment between what they're doing and what our goals are as well.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's been interesting because it's kind of removed this, we want to say your participation is as valuable if you pay 0 or if you pay 50. And it's also taken a lot of the back office out of it. So there's not like a membership price, another price, and another price. It's just welcome, and it's opened the doors, and we are slowly seeing that our audiences are becoming more multiracial, which is, clearly the goal.
I see.
And the other part is presenting more of our programs in other spaces. So I've already spoken about how we have summer right camps in the branch libraries. Last year, we, in partnership with the Highland Park Conservancy, wonderful partners, we launched our first poetry festival in the Highland Park Bowl, and it was so successful and exciting. And when one of my recent favorites that we were doing, it was intergenerational, it was multiracial, and feedback from our audience was, we want more of this, we want more poetry in the park. So that, in fact, we're taking our cues from our audience, and we'll be doing that. Another program that's very near and dear to me is our creative aging workshops. And those, again, are, we raise the money from foundations and from the New York State Council on the Arts. They invited us into this program. And our storyteller in residence, Almeda Whitus, takes programming into spaces where under-resourced seniors are served. So that's another partnership that's in a space that makes sense. And these are 6 or 8 week programs. They're multidisciplinary. Seniors are making visual art, they're storytelling, they're singing, they're writing, they're journaling. And most of all, they're connecting with one another's stories, empowering themselves through telling their own stories. And also, it builds compassion, connection, reduces isolation. These things are really, terrific challenges for seniors of all ages, and especially, we know, seniors who are economically impacted. So this is a space, again, where literature, we feel, has this nexus with social justice. It bridges a silo across disciplines. And we're hoping that our programs altogether amplify historically marginalized voices locally and nationally. So we have, we launched this during the pandemic, Literary Partners, and that was to open space for anyone in the greater Rochester community who has published something, self-published, in a magazine, it kind of doesn't matter, a space for them to present their art and connect with audiences. Post-COVID, what's been wonderful is we've been doing all of those on site. And it's been incredibly heartwarming to see the response and the joy in being able to create a platform for emerging as well as established writers. And that builds that writing and reading community in a way that's also self-selecting. We're not curating and saying, you can come, you cannot. It's come into this space. We don't have a lot of money, but what we do have is a building. We have space. We have our marketing effort. And we have belief. We want to empower you. We want to bring our skills in connection with your production and your journey. So that's been really also one of those heartwarming programs that's evolved. Another one has been, and then again, this is a nod to our reintroducing writing workshop opportunities in a way that we can make most available. So thanks to a wonderful woman, Jessica Pavia, who is herself a wonderful writer and is right now studying to get her teaching certificate and has taught locally at our colleges, had the notion she wanted to write more in community. And of course, COVID had been extra isolating in this way. So she launched it originally as a volunteer. Now she is a paid teaching artist for us. And basically, it's we created a space every Saturday afternoon for people to drop in. They do not need to sign up. They do not need to pay. And it has expanded to a community of 130.
Oh, my goodness.
So on any given Saturday, we will see 15 to 30 people gather. They have a chance to respond to a thoughtful prompt that Jessica has brought to the group out of her writing experience or reading experience that week. People have a chance to share their work if they wish. They have an opportunity to write away from the prompt, toward the prompt, and they also have a chance to connect and share their journeys. So you see, this is the way in which literature is a lived experience. It's not something we necessarily do in isolation with a book, although we all do that too, and that's wonderful.
Sure.
We've also resumed Rochester Reads, which is a program you alluded to earlier, where we encourage all of Rochester to read the same book.
Yes. Right.
And this year our selection is Xochitl Gonzalez's Olga Dies Dreaming, which is a book we're carrying in Spanish language and in English language. And the pivot that we made with Rochester Reads is we ask our 20-member artistic advisory team to select the book that they think most profoundly will speak to most people in Rochester.
Sure.
In addition to her keynote, she will be going into School of the Arts and doing an hour-and-a-half engagement with the creative writing students there. And we will also be conducting a book discussion at Monroe Jail for 30 women there who will be receiving 30 copies of the book, courtesy of Reggie. And they will also see the keynote, which will be streamed to them.
Oh, nice.
So we're, not covering as much ground as we did pre-COVID, where the author would go to multiple libraries. That's just not something the industry supports anymore. Authors are very specific about what they will and they won't do. The ground has really changed, so we're being responsive to that.
Yeah, that's great. It's nice to develop programs then that would align with what people are looking for.
We also launched a wonderful program this year, which we will continue, contingent on funding, but I think we'll be successful. And it's called Stagecraft, and this is a theater arts vocational fellowship whereby we provide 5 to 6 fellows with a $2,000 stipend and 100 hours of basically enrichment. Encounters with professionals in the field. They work to put on their own play, direct it, stage manage it. This year we did a stage reading of Monologues on Clarissa Street, and that was they produced that at Writers and Books, and also again at the Sankofa Theater Festival. And that is for BIPOC emerging practitioners ages 18 to 29, which is an age group that we know can often be challenged from taking their technical skills, their educational, academic skills, and then following a professional path. So this is an effort to create pathways into, really jobs.
Sure.
And we partnered with Jiva Theater and Blackfriars Theater for this.
Wow.
So again, that's very exciting for us because we're trying to think of ways in which we are responding to community aspirations and needs.
No, I love it. And these are organizations that the community supports as well. So yeah, it's wonderful. I love it. That's great. So how big is the budget of Writers and Books?
It's about $750,000. We're not large.
Yeah.
We
right,
try to
right.
do a lot with not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And like most arts and culture nonprofits, so much of what we do is it's the human resources that are invested.
Sure,
Just
sure,
lots
sure.
and lots of experience and time and building relationships. Our youth programming has expanded. We are now in 2 schools 19 and 23, which again, these serve predominantly under-resourced students.
Got it.
And we partner with the George Eastman Museum to do a wonderful program called Image Meets Word. And our sessions take place in the museum, where you can imagine the exposure to the collections is just, it's just stunning for the kids. And they are producing pantoums and sonnets and spoken word in response, and talking about their own journeys. They're gaining confidence. The teachers report that even the kids they thought would be too introverted or, in some way not engaged with it, they say, we cannot believe the text that these kids are writing. So that's been a really generative program, again, supported by local foundations. And another program that we've just started in the schools is called Scribe and Move, and where we have a 2-term program in Rochester Academy for middle school students who are reading at or above grade level. And they're doing a combination yoga, writing, and reading with Anderson Allen, who's a magnificent teaching artist, and a wonderful poet and actor in his own right.
Oh, beautiful. My goodness, the breadth of what Writers and Books does is great. And it's nice that it adjusted based on what's going on.
Yeah,
That's
right
good.
now we've embarked on a community-wide listening tour. And what our goal is with this is to literally listen and say, what are, not that we can respond to every single desire, but we want to, particularly with the reading, reading adults, people who use libraries or have very busy lives. This is a demographic that we feel we haven't sufficiently connected with. We're doing a great job with the youngsters, and then people who are empty nesters. And then there's this whole group of folks from all walks, all economic backgrounds, all cultural backgrounds. We feel we can do a much, a deeper dive with, and that's our goal.
Yeah, right. I love that, because then you might really produce people that are, great writers in the future, or you really have the talents rise to.
And even if it's just for their personal journey, we know that literature is just a vehicle for self-discovery and for engaging people with worlds of ideas. It's what we think of as an enlightened society, right? That's what the arts are for.
And one thing I asked that we didn't talk about before is the Gel Center. What is that about, and how can people leverage that?
Well, we were fortunate that 24 acres with an original house, cottage-ish, that acreage was bequeathed to Writers and Books, and I think the year was 1985. And Joe had, again, the foresight to say, yes, we'll take it. And there is an endowed fund that supports, grounds taking care of the property. And so originally, there were individual independent residencies, writing residences in the cottage. And then thanks to the Gleason family, Joe had the vision to build a lodge on the property. And that has been a site for other kinds of programming, especially intersectional things with youth programming. And then recently we were fortunate to completely upgrade the campus. We did a 6-figure renovation of the campus and drivable entrance, basically rebuilt Dell Cottage and put HVAC and painting and basically a complete upgrade. And we're really excited now that we'll be going forward with, we're just about ready to roll out a whole program for writing residencies at Gel Cottage. We've been providing some that have been admission free for people. And then a generous family established a trust where we can do that on the regular, a 2-week residency with a stipend for an under-resourced writer every year, and we're building on that.
Oh, nice.
We're really thrilled that we have this resource. Again, it's lots of human resources to make it go, but it's so gratifying.
That's great. But this has been a delight. The time just flew by. I really want to thank you, Allison Meyers, for being here and sharing about Writers and Books. Until next time, thank you, audience, for joining us. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you so much, Nanette.